Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal Sentinel.
WisconsinEye is on the campus of Chippewa Valley Technical College, interviewing Max Hart, a Democrat. He's from Black River Falls. He's running in the 92nd Assembly District. Max, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you for having me on.
Now, I noticed on your Facebook campaign page, you make an issue of transportation funding, and I want to use the example in Jackson County, and you're a board member. You have 230 miles of roads. You'll be able to reconstruct 2.5 miles, which puts you on a 100-year rotation or recycling or rehabbing schedule. So let's start with transportation funding. There's a gridlock in the Capitol on how to pay for our highway future. If you are a member of the Assembly, how should it be solved?
Oh, there's a couple of different ways, and one of the easiest ways I think we can do it, and it's not the most attractive way, but it has to be to raise the gas tax. What the gas tax raises to is a number that's undetermined. I've heard 10 cents a gallon. That's something that will have to be studied. But that's not the only way to raise it, but it's one of the fairest ways because it's a user fee that people that ride their bikes or people that maybe not drive as much, they don't have to pay as much for the roads, where if you're driving 20,000 miles a year, you pay more for the road. And then the state's also going to have to move into some general funds to fix it, because you cannot raise taxes enough on the gas tax because you're going to limit other factors. But if they can move some funding from the general aid into sharing it with the counties. So it used to be that the state used to do more shared revenue, general transportation aid, GTA funds, and they've cut those back significantly over the last 8 years, especially since Walker's come and he's cut back the shared revenue aid. And so we used to do probably 5 to 6 miles of road every year. Sometimes we do 10, depending upon the project of the road. But now we're down to, the last couple of years have been about 2.5 miles of road, which frankly is unsustainable. I live on a road, or I live near a road that's ran up about 5 years ago, its life did. And then there's another road and another road. There's 3 roads within probably a half a mile that need repair. And they are not even on a docket. And then we're not even talking about bridges. I farm, and there's a lot of farmers in my area. They have to use bridges to get over and take their grain. But these bridges are becoming abandoned. That means that they're only limited up to 40,000 or 60,000 pounds, but a lot of these semi-trailers are 80,000 above. And so that means they have to take detours to get down to La Crosse or to where their destination needs to be. So when you take into account all the money that it takes in doing detours and the amount of money it takes to repair tires, tie rods, wheel bearings, you actually end up paying the same amount of money whether you pay more in taxes, on gas taxes, or if you pay more repairing your vehicle. And so we just need to come to that realization that we need to actually repair our roads. And it needs to be a wholehearted thing too, to encourage more transportation by bike. We need to make roads more accessible, especially in the municipalities, for people to ride bike, because a bike weighs 100 pounds, 50 pounds, and in my car right now weighs 4,500 pounds. So the less cars we get on the road, the longer they'll last.
So you would vote for an increase in the gas tax?
I would. It's not a sexy vote. It's not the most popular vote. But sometimes we need to realize what we got to do.
And what about the talk in the Capitol about tolling? How do you feel about tolling?
I'd have to be convinced on it. Whenever we go to Illinois, we go to some farm shows in Kentucky, and we do our best to avoid them. So I'm not sure if tolling is the right way to do it. Maybe in some of the bigger cities like Milwaukee, you can toll some of the bigger highways. But I would do my best to stay away from that. That's just an idea that hasn't come to fruition much in Wisconsin. I haven't been convinced of the merits of that.
You're a member of a county board. Local governments have been living with levy limits since 2006. Some local government leaders say that they feel that it chokes their ability to provide local services. Is it time to loosen levy limits or get rid of them?
It'd be okay to loosen levy limits because we have a high need in our county, and we don't want to tax our people to death in our county. But what needs to happen is I think the state needs to come in, and they have all these mandates. They tell us we need to provide safety and policing powers for all these individuals. We need to make sure that kids and the adults are safe. So we need to do all of these programs, but they don't give us any funding. So the state, if they want us to do a program or to provide a service in our county, they should give us funding, but yet they can mandate to us what we need and can and cannot do. But sometimes it comes with funding and sometimes it doesn't. So it would be nice for them to loosen the levy limits to what we can tax at our local counties. But at the same time, the state needs to, again, go back to the shared revenue. They need to send more money back into the counties because some counties have a high tax base versus other counties don't. Eau Claire County has a high tax base, Jackson County doesn't. A lot of it is state and national forests and county forests, and a lot of us farmlands. So you have the use value assessment. So we have a limit to what we can tax. But yet Eau Claire County has a lot of municipalities, a lot of houses, and so does La Crosse County. So if more of this money can be sent down to Madison, then Madison divvies it up evenly and fairly amongst the counties that need the services, that would be the best way to do it. So it has to be a two-pronged approach, that we loosen the levy limits in the local level, and then more revenue coming from the state.
Okay, let's talk about healthcare in rural areas. In rural areas, you have older people. You have not as much household income as the statewide average. You have young people leaving, and you have more health care being provided by Medicare and Medicaid. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on how to preserve and maybe improve health care in the rural areas?
Well, the state of Wisconsin has their Badger Care program. Mm-hmm. It's pretty well funded, but yet again, Walker turned down federal funds to expand it, and that would have eased up other state funds that would have loosened them up. We need to expand the Medicaid program, and especially if we need to overcome the opioid epidemic, a lot of those individuals qualify for Medicaid. So I would like to see the state work to increase some of those programs, like the Badger Care program. And we also need to partner with the local rural hospitals, because it's not fair if you're a Black Falls resident to have to go down to La Crosse. We're fortunate in our town to have Black River Memorial Hospital. Whitehall has their hospital, so we have a lot of rural hospitals. But if we continue to cut funding to our Medicaid programs, you're not going to have those hospitals because, like you said, the population is older. Some of it's poorer population that qualify for those programs. And if they're not there, the hospitals cease to exist. And we've already seen this happen in states that chose to not take the federal funds. We've seen a lot of rural hospitals, especially in the southern part of the United States, down near Kentucky, South Carolina, Georgia. There's a lot of hospitals that are closed up because they chose not to take the funding.
Do you think the state has a role in helping to recruit and retain medical professionals like physicians, nurses, and other professionals?
Yeah. We have one of the best universities in the world, UW-Madison, and all these people come through the program, and it's hard to get into it, and then they leave the state, or maybe the state could forgive. If you go to a rural hospital and if you stay there for 5 years or 10 years, some of your debt can be forgiven because it takes a lot of money, a lot of school debt to become a doctor. I appreciate the people that choose to do that. It's a lot of work. And maybe they can be rewarded by going to a rural hospital, and they're going to find that the rural Wisconsin is a very beautiful place to live. It's not as hectic as you get into Madison or Milwaukee. Maybe they'll stick around for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And a lot of rural doctors are really well known in their area, too. We always have your doc holder and everybody that's doctors. So I would like to see the state work to forgive some of the loans if they choose to go to rural areas.
The current budget, the current two-year state budget, increased state aid to K-12 public schools. Do you think it increased it enough, or do we need a significantly more for our public schools?
Well, that's an easy answer. It's an increase, but not significantly enough. For after all the cuts that he made, or after all the cuts that the Republicans made to the state education initiatives, they've increased it over the last budget, but it wasn't enough. You look at all of the special ed programs that go underfunded. You look at all the ag and tech ed programs that go underfunded. It's not even, they didn't even take a serious look at trying to fund it. They said, yeah, it's the state's largest budget to education they've ever had. Well, it should be. It's counter inflation. Every budget you make should be the largest one, because if the economy is growing, it should be bigger. And that's what I see. And when I was in high school, I had 4 tech ed teachers in Black Falls High School. Now they have 2. And yet they expect people to be welders and mechanics, woodworkers, and metal people. But if you don't have that experience in high school, you're not going to get it. And then like the special ed programs, like with the No Child Left Behind law, and I believe that every child should have an equal education, and we should fund those schools. And the state should do more to help with the general aid. Again, when it comes back to school districts, Black Earth Falls has a good tax base versus Melrose, and or versus Whitehall and those other smaller towns. So I think the state really needs to realize they need to take a long look at how they fund schools, and they need to redo how the funding formula for them. And right now it's not fair. Urban schools get a lot more funding because of the tax base from the property taxes that they pay, and rural schools, they get what they can, and they offer the services. They do a good job with what they have, but they can always use more.
You favor more state aid for transportation and more state aid for schools. Mm-hmm. How do you raise the additional money? How would you raise the additional money?
Well, you have to look. You can do a state property tax. Right now, my last tax bill, there was no state property tax. Right. I believe I saved myself about $40, which to some people is a lot of money. You can go out and you can buy a supper somewhere. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not. I'd rather pay the state my $40 and everybody else pay their share of $40. And then they can give the money back, because by investing, it's an investment. I shouldn't call it a tax. You're investing into the next generation of the population. You're investing into your infrastructure. So for $40 on my behalf, and I have an average house. My house is worth $130,000. I think for rural Wisconsin, that's an average place. I'd be more than willing to give my $40 to the state if that means we can have better funded schools and better infrastructure on our roads and bridges.
The choice program, the voucher program, has grown from Milwaukee to Racine to now statewide. Do you support it?
I support the choice program. I believe that if you want to go to a different school, you can, but not on the taxpayer dollars. I pay property taxes. I own a house. I support my public schools, and if you want to go to a private or charter school, you're more than welcome to do that. But I don't want my tax dollars going to pay for voucher schools. And I think it would be interesting to see the study or see the numbers to see how much of my dollars actually go to pay for voucher schools, because Wisconsin's not rich enough. We don't have enough wealthy people to afford two school programs. We cannot afford a public school program and a private voucher school program. I have no issue if they want to be present, but we can't fund both of them. We just don't have the money.
In light of school shootings and mass shootings, do we need to change gun laws, Max?
Yeah, you gotta, the criminal background check. Everybody should do a criminal background check.
So there should be a universal background check?
Yeah, a universal background check. Why wouldn't you want to do that? And I have guns at home. I'm a hunter, and if I have to go somewhere and wait 48 hours to get a gun, that's okay with me. And if you look at school shootings and if you look at suicide rates, more than half the suicides, or about half, are actually done with a weapon. And maybe if they had the 48-hour wait period, or if they had some more background checks, they wouldn't get the gun, or they can think differently about what they're going to do. And that also goes into mental health. Last night at our county board meeting, we just approved another substance abuse counselor who works with people that abuse drugs or alcohol and mental health issues. That's what we got to get back to. And also, I have a degree in teaching. I have an agricultural education degree. I've done substitute teaching. And at some point in time, the parents need to become more involved, too. It can't just be on the state. And I encourage the parents to get involved in their students. I shouldn't say students, get involved in your kids. Ask them what they're doing, help with their homework, read to them. Because sometimes what kids need is they need the love and affection that they get from their parents. And sometimes they don't get it at school. And mental health is a huge thing, and it starts at home.
You just voted on the issue last night. What do we do next to deal with the opioid, methamphetamine, and the heroin epidemic?
Again, mental health, and we just got to start providing more substance abuse counseling and try to get to it before it exacerbates into a bigger issue. And a lot of that is solid communities. I'm from a rural area, and we're not going to talk too much about farming today, I see. I'm a farmer myself. But a lot of it is just economic development in our rural towns. And then if we have strong towns, strong communities that support and we're proud of where we come from, maybe we won't do the drugs. And then if we have good jobs, we got to have good jobs. You can't just have jobs, but good jobs. And that's what it is, people. And drug addiction is an addiction, it's a disease. It's not something you choose to do. It's something that it works with your neural pathways in your brain. And so it takes a wholehearted thing, whether it be drug treatment courts, We got to do pathways to incarceration or pathways away from incarceration that treat the adults.
Away from?
Yep, away from jail. I just had a chat last week with our TAD. It's I forgot what the lady. She has a TAD grant, TAD grant. I forgot what it stood for. I chatted with her for an hour. What can I do as a county board member to make more funds available or to provide more support for her? Because we cannot arrest her way out of this drug problem. We've already tried it in the 80s. It doesn't work. And so I've asked her what we can do, and basically we got to get together with the criminal justice system, the prisons, and the jails, and then the mental health people to see what we can do to fix the problem. And it could be the pharmacies not giving out as much opioids. It can be stronger communities, and ask people to ask your neighbor how they're doing. You know, walk down the street, and then if you have good jobs, because sometimes you have a bad job, you get depressed, you want to try something to ease the pain, and it just doesn't work, and you do the drugs, and you become addicted. So we got to. I think compassion is the way to do it.
Well, a follow-up question. There's debate in the Capitol on whether we need a new prison, state prison. Do we?
It depends upon what they're doing. I think they're replacing an old prison. I think at the grander scheme of things, I don't see the issue with not having a new prison, because if you have one that's 100 years old, you got to replace it. But at the same time, maybe we should think about how we're doing our prison sentences. If you're a non-violent drug offender, maybe there is a diversion program. So instead of having to build a new prison, we can lower our current prison population. And just as a fact, America has the highest population in the world, highest prison population in the world, and we only have 300 million people in America, and China has over 1 billion. So we have an issue here with how we imprison people, so we need to look at that.
If you were in the Assembly, would you have voted for the tax incentive for the Foxconn development?
I would not have.
Why?
It doesn't benefit our area in the 92nd. Yeah, there's some companies that can take advantage. Hoffman Construction got a contract to do some construction work down there for about $13 million, which is great. I appreciate that for the company, but we have millions of dollars of construction to do in Jackson County. So we don't need to spend $4 billion in one corner of the state for a foreign government. At the same time, our schools are underfunded, our infrastructure is deteriorating, and our environment, I don't see how that's environmentally sound, too, to take 1,000 acres and then to pump 7 million gallons of water daily out of Lake Michigan. I just don't see how that's environmentally sound. And a lot of the people will probably come out of Chicago for the jobs. And it's a lot of money. I went to vote for it. It doesn't benefit the 92nd Assembly or 92nd District that well.
Right. What's your position on recreational marijuana and medical marijuana?
I have no opinions. I have no strong opinions in favor or against it. I don't see the issue with it. If you look at it a scientific way, marijuana has about the same effects on the brain as what alcohol does. Alcohol is legal right now. Marijuana isn't. And if there was a bill that was introduced in the legislature, I would sign on with it. I'm not going to introduce it myself because I have no strong opinions, but I'm not against it. And I just think we can use the tax dollars to help fund other things. Colorado's doing it. I think we should take a look at all the states that have legalized it, talk to them, what's working out, what's not working out, and make ours the best one.
Okay. And last question. Primary on August 14th. Do you want to talk about differences between you and your opponents?
Yeah. So I'm a diverse person. I have a degree in ag education. I grew up on a farm. I grew up on a 40-cow dairy farm. Worked very hard. I know what work is. Right now, I farm beef cows with my mom, and I also work at a small community bank as an ag lender. I'm on the county board. I'm involved in many small community organizations, and I believe I know what the people need in the 92nd. I'm committed. Tomorrow night I have a meeting. Thursday night I have a meeting. I have meetings just about every night of the week. I'm committed to the people, and I want to represent them in Madison. I'm a rural person. I support our rural values. I love Melrose, Wisconsin. It's a town of 500 people. Talk about characteristics. Everybody's unique in their own ways, and I love it. Sometimes you don't get that in those larger towns. And I want to support those people. I want to bring prosperity back to our area. Our small towns are deteriorating. People are leaving. The infrastructure's not there. Some schools are closing. And we got to bring people back to rural Wisconsin because that's where it's at. And the farmers, go farmers. I'm a farmer myself. We got to fix the dairy price, the dairy industry, because what's going on now, it's not working. I don't know what the answer is, but I know what the answer isn't.
Okay, understand. Max Hart of Black River Falls is a Democratic candidate in the 92nd Assembly District. Max, thank you for talking to WisconsinEye.
Thank you.
Thanks.